Navia Buffs, yay! I ain't gonna lie to you guys here. From what leaks had rumored these buffs to be in the past few days, I did expect a lot from these changes, like a whole kit overhaul, and what we got wasn't quite as significant as that, but still pretty good. So if you're a future Navia main, this is your moment. The biggest part about today's changes regards her elemental skill damage, which is important considering her elemental skill is the main part of her kit. The skill received a pretty significant bump in terms of base multiplier, which is great considering that if you have 3 stacks on Navia, it will scale very well. Specifically, in case you don't remember, getting 3 stacks on Navia multiplies the base multiplier by 2 in terms of what you get for the final damage. So, what I'm getting at is that this 160% base multiplier increase she got becomes 320% at 3 stacks, and it's very good. It's around a 30% net damage increase to her elemental skill damage, and you probably don't need a theory crafter to be able to tell that this is pretty insane, since her elemental skill is the main part of her damage. Let me remind you all that if you enjoy my work and my theory crafting, you can show your support by subscribing and leaving a thumbs up and also following me on Twitter. To compensate for this huge buff, the elemental burst took a small hit. The elemental burst was never even comparable damage-wise to the elemental skills, so just in theory this is pretty minor. But it needs to be said that it's still a big chunk of her damage, so it being reduced isn't that great. Luckily the change wasn't that noteworthy, since the whole elemental burst damage decreased by just around 10%. So it's comparatively a much smaller change compared to the elemental skill, and considering that is the bigger part of her kit in terms of damage, it's much less relevant. Basically, it's nothing you should really worry about. Additionally, her signature set also got buffed, since now the cumulative buff you will get from the 4-piece effect if you have a Crystallite Shield active will be of 50% geo damage bonus. Previously, this signature set was in a pretty awkward spot, considering it was the best option for the sub-DPS role of Navia, while it wasn't the best option for her carry role if you had Furina on team, since in that case the Marashu set would be better. And after this change, it's still in the same awkward spot as before, since it's still not better than the Marashu set if you have Furina on team and you use Navia as a carry, while it's still the best option, of course, in all other scenarios. So pretty uneventful, but we'll take it, it's a buff. Overall, this was a very positive change. In fact, it's one of the most relevant changes we've gotten in beta ever. For a straight sub-DPS Navia who doesn't use her normal attacks, this is a 20% damage increase for her, so incredible. If you also take into account the normal attacks, it becomes a 13% damage increase, which is still very nice, but not quite as impressive. It's worth mentioning that, in my opinion, the main function Navia will have will be that of a nuker that is able to deal a lot of damage to a single target in a single instance, and this ability of her increased by a lot in value, since the elemental skill got buffed by 30%, and as a result, she looks much better now in my opinion. These types of damage abilities are more commonly found in elemental bursts, but Navia is a character that will be able to focalize a lot of her rotation damage in single instances, multiple times a rotation, and that is her main value to me. Moving on, her constellations also got changed, so I'll talk about them briefly. Her Constellation 1, which is an energy refund that applies when she uses her elemental skill, got buffed in terms of how much energy it will refund. The old values already made their energy requirements drop by a lot, but the new values make this scenario where you'll basically never need an energy recharge sands on her, which is perfect. It basically turns her burst into a 40 energy cost ability or less, and considering how instrumental that is to generate stacks for her elemental skill, this constellation is pretty amazing. The Constellation 2 and Constellation 6 got similar changes, in that the Constellation 2 buffs the critical rate of her elemental skill, while the Constellation 6 buffs the critical damage, and both the values of these constellations got increased. We are reaching pretty serious whale territory here, but if you're interested in boosting the elemental skill damage as much as possible, these constellations will do that and more. So with these constellations and also these buffs as a whole, they're trying to reinforce the fact that Navia first and foremost will be a nuker, and will excel at dealing single target damage in a single instance. Considering that her elemental burst, other than increasing the energy she will get, will also reduce the cooldown of the elemental burst, that makes her skills pretty spammable, and that is optimal for speedrun scenarios. So at high Constellation level, you'll pretty much have a character that can throw Oppenheimer level nukes at opponents, and very frequently at that. Overall, pretty nice changes for Navia. I doubt we'll see any more like this in the next few weeks, since this was already pretty significant, but maybe just a few small touches to finalize her kit, so we'll see.